A wizard is never late. He arrives precisely when he means to. Gandalf the Grey.
Do or do not. There is no try. Yoda.
To infinity and beyond. Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah. I'll be back. Terminator.
Yeah. Just keep swimming. Dory.
Nice one, yep. Ooh. E.T. Phone Home.
Yeah.
E.T.
Nice. I think that's it. After 4 years, 1 month, and 1.5 weeks, we've done it. Our conclusive list of every quote you need to be aware of to understand the human race.
Was that really the best use of our time?
I mean, it was only 36,024 hours.
Bloody hell. Well, on to the next list then.
What's that one?
Every trading card game that has a simple 5-prong approach to understanding philosophy, which are represented by colours, one of which is white but really looks more like a yellow, blue like the eyes of Daniel Craig, black like the incognito mode on Google, red like the blood of my enemies, and green like the grass on the other side.
Yu-Gi-Oh?
Amazing! Let's break for lunch! No way Yu-Gi-Oh! Could get this deep.
Yeah. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast.
What was that?
That's the intro. Yeah. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP, brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast, where scones are always perfectly moist inside. I'm your host, Walt. I don't know why I said scones. Isn't it scones?
It depends on if you're in the north or south of England, really.
Where scones are always perfectly moist inside.
Ew, he's on the south of the
On
river.
the south side of the
South
river.
of the river.
Yeah, I love it over here.
Hello, Commander players. I am the 0.141592653589793 in pi. All the other numbers are someone else.
And what's your name?
I'm James.
Oh,
by the
yeah,
way.
cool.
I
okay.
forgot to-
Yes. That's usually how that goes.
Yeah, James. That's me, by the way.
But also, if you needed that bit of the
I
pie...
was way too focused on remembering the decimal points of pi.
I respect that. You've also spaced them out, I see, in the script.
I did because I couldn't read them all in one go.
I respect it so much. Before we get to the transmission, you should check out our Patreon, because it's the absolute best way to support the content that me and James make. There's like some huge things planned for even later this year. Wink, wink.
Yeah, there's some really exciting things going on. We just had Perth Command Fest by Good Games Australia. And
I think it was the Commander event. I don't think it was technically a Command Fest.
Was it technically not Command Fest?
I don't think it was Command Fest. I think it was just like a big Commander thing, but maybe not. I imagine Command Fest is probably like trademarked by Wizards of the Coast.
But look, there could be some more coming up this year.
Yes.
And Walt and I would love to come along and meet all of you guys.
Yeah.
We're investigating regular streaming schedules, which we've been talking about, more video content. All of this stuff can happen, but Patreon makes it so much easier because we get more tools to work with, more time, and just more resources. So if you do want to see all of this exciting stuff from Get Commanded, the best way to go to support us is patreon.com/getcommanded.
It's true.
It's the best place
Get
to do
Commanded podcast. I
you
always
sure?
get this wrong. Yeah, I think we're Get Commanded on everything except Patreon. For
Which
some
is Get
reason,
Commanded Podcast.
we're Get Commanded podcast. I think Get Commanded must have been taken, and I was like, what?
Well,
there's no Get Commanded on Twitter, Instagram, Threads.
But Patreon.
But Patreon, there was the one guy who's like, no, I want to be that.
Well, just go on to patreon.com, then go to the search bar and go and Get Commanded.
Type in Get Commanded there. We will, in fact, pop up.
For sure.
But we have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy, from the Space Commanders. It's time to Get Commanded.
All 6 broadcasts on your explanations of Magic the Gathering's colors have been received, but we now require further comparative analysis. Walt and James, discuss the colors' philosophies in relation to yourselves.
Two space commanders.
They were both there.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm not sure if you remember at our last episode within this series, Philosophy of Green.
Yes, we've always had the color philosophy transmissions come from that first voice that we heard.
Kind of pompousy one
Yeah.
that's concerned with human interaction and emotion, I guess.
Yeah, a little more philosophical maybe
Yeah.
than the regular one. But then at Philosophy of Green, we had our regular space commander say, hey, we need more from you. I suspect this is the more that he needs because he said, discuss the colors philosophies in relation to yourselves.
Yeah, this is as the other one said, a comparative analysis. So we're looking at how we as people relate to the colors of magic. That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of discussed this a little bit in our other episodes because as implied, we've done all of the colors in their own individual episodes.
Yeah.
We've actually done 6 episodes. We did one at the very beginning of this series on color philosophy in general.
Oh, yeah. Before we got into any of the colors, we just were talking about, okay, there's
Yeah.
philosophies behind the colors in Magic.
I'm not sure if you remember that because that was all the way back in episode 26.
Yeah, a long time ago. Over a year.
Yeah,
It's been
well
over
over
a
a
year
year.
since that one. But yes, we then did episode 31. We did Color Philosophy of White.
Mm-hmm.
41 was blue. 57 was black. 73 was red. And then 80 was green.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's... We've covered every of the single colors of Magic and, yeah, color philosophy in general. And I guess now we'll probably like recap a little bit.
I guess this is like the final exam because we have to put our theory into practice.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of seeing what the Space Commanders are doing here. They're like, all right,
Yeah.
now you know the philosophies and understand them like really, really well. Apply them in the real world and specifically apply them to yourselves.
Yeah. Keen. Honestly, super keen.
Because I guess that like the first thing I want to say here is something that Mark Rosewater said, because I can probably assume that a lot of listeners are already going, oh, by the end of this episode, we're going to get a Walt's red or Walt's white and James is blue. And
Yeah.
that's not necessarily true because, and I don't think that that's what we're going to gun for here, because Mark Rosewater specifically says humans, all of us, are every color of magic.
Yeah, we're all 5 color entities as human beings because humans are very complex and multifaceted things.
And have deep philosophies about everything.
Yeah, and this is also a big part of the reason why the colors can resonate so well with us is because they've captured the essence of so many aspects of what it is to be human. And so there will be ones that resonate more or less with each of us, but each of us has at least some of every color. No one is like devoid of black or devoid of blue. It can't really happen in a person.
I think you might have like more of one color than the
Definitely,
other one.
definitely.
And I think that like some people are like, oh, really centered in blue.
I like that phrase a lot. And Mark
Centered
Rosewater
in.
uses that,
Yeah.
center, like, because he talks about the shards, he talks about the center of each one because there's usually like a goal and then 2 sets of
That
means
support it,
that
yeah.
support that goal. Yeah.
All right, so I guess what we'll do in this episode, I think this makes sense. Let's go through each color once
Sure.
more again.
Uh-huh.
I think we'll recap just the color in general, its wants, its desires, and we're not going to go too much into that because we've done hour-long episodes of each of them.
Sometimes more than an hour. Sometimes closer to 2.
Much more than that. I think then we should start looking at how we relate to the colors in our personal lives. And then we should look at how we play Commander like the color. This is something
Okay.
I'm really interested in because even when you're not playing with cards of that color, sometimes players will play with a certain philosophy or certain strategy in mind, which resembles the philosophy or the attributes of one of the colors of Magic the Gathering.
Big time. I mean, I think you can also, sometimes you see people kind of brute forcing their way into a color. Like they'll play like a 3-color commander, but you can tell what their center is based on the way they built the color. I mean, build the deck, sorry. For instance, I know we last episode we're talking about your Zaxara, the exemplary deck.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
is a
3-color deck.
Sultai deck, but I would say a lot of people would build that deck as base green.
Hydras, big stumpy creatures.
Yep, and I would say that yours, and we've talked about this specifically before, yours is definitively base blue. You
Yeah.
play that deck as a answers, responses kind of deck. It's still a ramp deck and a big mana deck. I'm not saying you're going against green, but I would say your base in that color is blue, and blue is probably the color that you approach a lot of your magic through.
Well,
but I
we'll
guess we'll go into
find out,
that. We'll
shan't
go
we?
into
We'll
that.
find out
I'm
later in
jumping
this
the gun.
I then also think it's probably worth us talking about things that we do that the color personified, like the color white, would hate us doing. And I think that there's like the sub question of that, which is like, what can we learn from this color in our daily lives, or even in Magic the Gathering, of what we could learn from the color to bring to the table so we can have an attribute that's pretty weak in ourselves, but grows because we can learn it from that color.
Yeah, I can see that there's kind of two different approaches here, because if there's something the color hates that you do, that could be something that you're happy with. But then, what can we learn from this color can be more like, okay, like I see that I might be lacking in something this color is good at. I need to get there.
Take a lesson from this color.
Yeah, and so there's sort of different approach there of like whether you think it's something that you need to improve on. Because I could see us getting to some of these colors and going, this black would hate me because I'm selfless. And you might be like, I'm
actually
happy
pretty
to be
happy with that.
selfless.
But like we know that the colors themselves have flaws. So sometimes when we talk about things that the colors will hate, that's because that's their flaw.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Big time. And look, obviously, there's not going to be a perfect way through any of this. There'll be things that we might strive towards in a color that you yourself might not want to strive towards in that color. There'll be things that a color does that we don't like that you might like. Like, it's not a perfect thing, but we're talking about how our own unique little arrangement of weird stuff relates to these 5 colors and their meanings.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be so different for everyone, and I hope that you can play along at home, listener out there.
Yeah, and so I think when we get to each of these colors, how are we going to be announcing like how much we feel we have aligned with that color?
Should we let's rank ourselves out of 10 with how aligned with the colors we are.
So 10 being the most.
10 being like you are
pure that color.
Color. And then 1 being, or 0 being I'm nothing like this color at all.
Sure.
I don't think we'll get a 0.
No,
but
I'd be shocked. Yeah.
Let's go from 1 to 10 on that scale. Let's do it secretly after each color.
Sure.
And then at the end of the episode, we'll reveal what we assigned ourselves. And then we could do one of those, in like video games, how you have those like star point charts where it's
you
certain
see them
attributes
in personality tests as well. I forget what they're called, but you know what I mean, like the big spiky, like there'll be like
imagine a pentagon and there's
there's like
shading.
an attribute. There's like you
dexterity
could use,
or
you could
constitution.
use the D&D style thing of like constitution, dexterity, whatever, and then like if you're filled all the way, you'll be all the way along that side of the pentagon. But then if you've got like 0 charisma, you might be like right in the center of the pentagon. So you end up with this kind of like star shape that's a bit lopsided.
I'll tell you what, I'll put them together and I'll post them up on our Patreon.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
right.
cool.
Okay, should we just go Wooberg order?
Let's go into it.
Oh my god, we're talking about white again. This has been a long time since we've spoken about white. Just as a quick recap, we spoke about white when we spoke about what they want. We spoke about peace was the big single word. Unity, order kind of fell around that. We spoke about white's really lofty goals and how white's approach to achieve them. And looked into the communism type of philosophy, even looked at fascism and other political structures. White's a very political color.
Yep.
Because we spoke about, if you remember, all the religious and governmental imagery that was always put on white cards.
There's like a strong utopian drive for white, and so you can see how that would result in very rigid government systems.
Yeah, and then when it all plays out in Commander, we spoke about the fact that white's really good at being a defensive color. White's got a lot of great stacks, life gain, a great removal suite, and the common appearance of the word vigilance on cards. It's very like I'm going to defend my values and build my wall around my safe little community of people.
I would associate vigilance with white the same way that I associate trample with green.
And haste with red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like sense. Very much personifies that color.
Yeah. All right. Let's go into it. How are Walt and James like white in our everyday lives? I guess I feel like you're more white than I am, but I'll start here because I feel like I actually have a very strong white attribute the fact that I love community building. This is something that I've been really passionate about for years. I mean, I built the Greensboro Commander community up from basically scratches. I was a huge part of the snow sports team at my university. I just am I'm like a member of hundreds of Discords at this point, just to like engage with conversations. I'm a really big community focused person, and I'm really passionate about people finding their people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is a very white attribute, right? Like you can look at a lot of the colors and talk about where they sit on the kind of like individualist versus collectivist kind of scale. And I would say that white is pretty much as far to the collectivist side as you could possibly go.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe even in the white episode, we talked about Hofstede's 7 cultural dimensions, if you remember that.
Yeah.
An academic talking about, it was a business academic that was looking at how you can market to specific cultures by ranking them on a scale of these 7 dimensions. And one of them is collectivism versus individualism.
Yeah, I mean, this comes up in a lot of fields. Like even in psychology, when you're looking at the way that people relate to communities and family structures and this kind of thing, you still will see the terms collectivist and individualist thrown around in terms of cultures, because it makes a big difference on what kind of a person you are in terms of just what your focus is.
Yeah, and I think when I look at like the people around me and society at large, I really like to be more of a collectivist person. I'm always the person that's like, all right, what's best for everyone? Let's make sure we can find a date that works for everyone. I think the other thing that I do that's really, really white is that I'm a big rule setter, especially like in my house. I'm the person that manages our budget and manages the spending. I'm the type of person that says like, all right, the house needs to be cleaned. We are doing that this weekend. Like I will make our schedule. I will manage all of that. And I think that a lot of people might immediately hear that and go, wow, James is really controlling. Theo's fine. They're allowed out of the basement. It's fine. No. But I think a lot of people see that as really controlling, but I just see that as a really white attribute. It's the thing that like white really likes to have order and structure. And I aim for that. I think that maybe I'll talk about it a little bit with another color, but I aim for structure and aim for rules and aim for regimented systems. And I think that's what I'm like in every day for white. I think you are that though.
Look, oh God, I could talk forever about specifically this. I kind of could not be more white in my everyday life. My life itself is just extremely structured. I eat very, very similar things every day. I'm very much like if I don't eat 2 bits of fruit in a day, I'm like, oh shit, I missed my second bit of fruit today.
Yeah, and by the way, when he says the same thing, he'll weigh his morning muesli.
I do weigh my morning muesli. That is a bit of a hangover from when I was much more rigid with my diet when I was going to the gym. But even that is an indication of what kind of person I was, right? I was like, okay, I've got to track my macronutrient intake for my gym progress. I track my progress in the gym very closely. I also track my measurements in my body, so I know which parts of my body are growing relative to others.
Do you like measure your biceps and stuff?
Measure. Oh, right. Me and Electra do it every couple of months.
I did not know you did that.
No, there you go. More structure. More! It's the Kylie Ren gif.
More!
I mean, even like the way I approach creative things, like Thrifty Thursdays comes out every week, usually at 3 p.m.
Yeah, you are very structured in, even like Get Commanded. This is something that you and I differ a lot on, is you are so on time with like the scheduling of posts and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, get to it when I get to it.
Yeah, it's a problem, but anyway, we'll go into that later probably. Look, I would also say though that I am a big idealist, and I sort of like, you know, I empathize with the utopian ideals that white espouses. Some people kind of look at that and go, that's not realistic. We talked about it a lot when we talked about black, which I'm sure we'll get to, that there's people who would look at the way that white sees the world and go, we'll never get there. And I'm kind of like, maybe not, but wouldn't it be nice to try?
It's a thing to aspire to, so we should try.
And that's kind of where I'm at. And I do want to just mention that I am vegan. And I think, you know, if white is a lot about peace through structure and you know, everyone needs to be taken care of, I would say that vegans do this in the sense that they just consider everyone like looking out for everyone includes animals. And
Yeah.
so they're like, if I'm looking out for everyone, that includes all the animals and beings all around me.
I think a lot of people would be like, but isn't that green? Wouldn't that be like... And I think
it is too.
crosses into green, but I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is like the fact that you have implemented a structure in your life, which is this is what I will allow myself to eat and consume and wear and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're saying that that is a very altruistic thing to do, which is for the good of the world, because if you're not taking away the animal resources, then you're not affecting the world. Is that right?
Pretty much. Yeah, I guess I would put it specifically, like, I see the structure thing. The structure thing is definitely a part of it, because there's people who are, like, quote, vegan, who are like, I'll have honey on the weekends. And it's like, that's not vegan. Anyway.
I'm a vegetarian, but I eat fish.
Yeah,
No, you're not.
Flexitarian. I can't believe that's a real word people use.
Flexitarian.
Anyway, whatever. Do what you can if you can. I would more so say, like, it's very much like, okay, I want to look out for everybody.
Yeah.
And just my definition of everybody includes animals. And so I'm like, all right, what's the way I live in the world that is a structure, I agree, but that looks out for everyone. So that's my thinking there.
Yeah, I actually really respect that. So in Commander,
Uh-huh.
when we're like actually playing the game that we have a podcast about,
Sure.
when I think of what I'm like when I'm white, when I'm at a game of Commander and I'm at the table, is again, I'm the rule setter.
Yeah.
I mean, not only with the rules of Magic the Gathering, like the actual, like, you know, rule 304.1.b, I'm specifically thinking about this in terms of politics, because when we spoke about white, we talked a lot about political structures, about Marxism, fascism, and we spoke about how, like, white takes these attributes to kind of make sure that they're using it as a means for their end goal, which is building the perfect society. And even when I'm not involved in the politics, let's say it's a political discussion between you and player A, I'm not involved in this at all. Like, you're trying to make a deal with them about not swinging at you and all this kind of stuff. I will jump in to make sure that the terms of the deal are, like, outlined thoroughly, structured, and make sure, you know, everyone signs on the dotted line. I think the other thing that I do as well at the Commander table is I play very defensively. I'm not...
You're very reactive, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, I'm very much a wait now kind of player.
Yeah. Which is a really good thing, by the way. I think that you can win a lot of Commander games doing this.
In Commander, I think it's probably better than being too fly by the seat of your pants.
Yes.
A lot. And I think that in one-on-one formats, it can be really detrimental, because honestly, like, there is a meta in Standard at the moment that's like can be so mid-rangey and take such a long time to get through that you can just deck yourself out.
Yeah.
And like that's not going to win you the game. So you need to be more aggressive, you need to swing. But in Commander, I agree with you. It's probably a better thing to do, of like hold back, wait for your opportune moment to win the game.
We see so many wraths in Commander, I think, that it's usually right to wait to deploy your game-winning threat until the turn that you think you can win. Or, you know, as close to then as you possibly can. I want to point out, because you talked about setting the rules, I think something we have in common here in terms of playing Commander, we enforce a Rule 0.
Yeah, that's so true.
So in terms of a structure around making sure everyone is taken care of, it's not in our script, by the way, but I just had the thought that this is something we both feel very strongly about. Is like, okay, we want everyone to have a good time. We need a structure to make sure everyone has a good time. We are going to walk through Rule 0. We have a Rule 0 template.
Yeah.
How's your deck win? How consistent is it?
We have it printed at game stores.
So that we can bring it along and say, you must do this.
Yeah, I guess I'd never really thought about the fact that, like, Commander also involves before the game starts.
Yeah.
Like, we are very white in to make sure that we are thinking out for everyone when we do that. We're making sure that everyone at the table is having the best time possible. Yeah. Which is a very collectivist idea. Yeah. Yeah, nice one. Didn't think of that.
I think for me, playing Commander in white, I think I also am very, very safe, I would say. Maybe not as safe as you, interestingly, which is funny to say out loud. It's complicated, is what I would say.
You're a different kind of safe, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of like, I've got this one out, you know, and I'm sort of like holding that one out, and then you're like sandbagging like 4 things in your hand sometimes. I feel
probably because I've spent the last 8 turns drawing cards.
Yes, which you definitely do. I think I'm not very good at sacrificing some of my board for an advantage. I'm very much like, I'll try to save everyone, which I think is very white. Like, I'm like, no, all my creatures are precious, equally precious. And it's like,
this 1/1 insect is the same value as Thran.
Yeah, same thing. Exactly the same thing. I think the other thing I would say in terms of playing white and being, white and commander is when I die in a commander game, I'm very much like, how can I leave this game in the fairest possible state that I can?
So you're not king making.
No, I don't king make and I don't spite play usually.
Yeah.
Although, if I can see someone's miles in the lead and I'm dying, I'll like spend all my removal spells on that person. Like, and I've heard, we've talked about this before, but Josh Lee Kwai even advocates for this and says, you should make people like who you play with regularly regret attacking you.
Yeah, always leave the mark on them of like, hey, if I'm going down,
yeah,
and
I'm
you're
taking
trying
you down.
Yeah.
So next time you play with me and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to swing lethal at Walt, think about what he might do to you in return.
Yeah, I'm not just going to say no blocks. I will try and block your biggest thing.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, like there's times. I mean, I was playing a game with us about a couple months ago now at the kitchen table, and I conceded rather than attack with anything or do anything in my turn because I thought it was the fairest thing I could do.
Yeah, because I remember that game specifically.
Weird. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but it was to do with like who I attacked and which creatures I had and how many blockers I had. All these things were like affecting who might likely win the game.
It was basically if you made an action of any kind, you would have swayed it to one person or the other.
Yes, and so for me, like, and this is the extent that I got to, I was like, I don't see a way I win this game, so I would rather concede and hopefully make it a better contest. In the end, Theo just like smashed us, so it didn't matter at all. But like, I wanted to leave the game in the fairest state that I can. I feel that that's quite a white attribute as well.
That is. It's very much like, all right, these are the rules, these are the guidelines.
Yeah.
It's a very gentlemanly way of fighting.
Yeah.
It's like, I think, I kind of imagine white personified as being like, yes, good show.
Good show. I might be dead, but gosh, it was a great contest.
I do look forward to seeing the victor of this contest.
Well done, Napoleon. You can kill me now.
I lay down my sword before you. All right, what was the other one we were going to... What white hates. That was what we were going to talk about.
And what we can learn from white
True.
as well.
Okay. Look, I think... Even though I said that I'm very, like, try to be regimented, I was specifically pushing the word try. I think I do live by the seat of my pants a little bit too often just in my daily life. I'm getting better at structuring my life with, like, my to-do lists, calendars, etc. But, no, I think White would be proud of Walt. when White looks at Walt, and they would be like, you're not doing enough when it looks at me. But I do think I need more of White's structure in my life. I think that there is a lot of things that I could benefit from having like an idea of what my week is going to look like before I commit to much more, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And this is, I mean, I think in a few of the colors we're going to go into, probably the topic of burnout might come up a bit for maybe even for both of us, but I think this is probably an example of that, right? It's like, if you look at a week and go, I don't think I can commit to more stuff, then when someone goes like, hey, you want to come to this concert on Thursday? You might go, actually, I'll stay in. Is that sort of what you're getting at? Or?
Yeah, and I think that white is the best color to prevent that.
Sure.
Because white is the safeguard color. It's the build my walls and keep my community safe. And you are part of your community. Do you know what I mean?
It's also, I would say, white would be a color that would believe very firmly in boundaries.
Yeah, setting physical walls and personal emotional
boundaries. I feel like white would be like, yes, more structure.
Yeah. I think when I'm like thinking about commander as well, I think I could learn a little bit from white is I am a little bit of a massive whopping hypocrite. I set a lot of rules in Commander that I was talking about when I'm talking about like political deals and all that kind of stuff. But I manipulate the absolute hell out of them. And we did a space battle on this where I very proudly admitted that if you don't outline your rule, like if your terms of the agreement well enough, I will bend them to my benefit. And I think that white would look at that and just be disappointed, honestly, because it is probably thinking, no, you understood what they meant.
Yeah, I think white would be on the side that I was defending in that particular space battle, which was spirit of the deal.
Yes.
White would be going like, no, we know what you meant.
Yeah.
You know, like we all had that understanding and that's what we're working towards, not like the words as they're written.
Not blocking on your turn should also include not fogging.
Yes.
Like, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like, whereas I would be like, you didn't say fog.
Yeah.
You only said blocks.
Big time.
Got you. I think that I could probably learn a little bit more about white, because I think the thing that white gains from being that kind of person and the spirit of the deal is they make a lot of friends.
Yes.
And I think that white we'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about black. Black is pretty lonely on the other end of the spectrum, lives a lot on its own. And I think, I'm not saying I'm lonely. I just realized what that sounded like. I'm not saying I'm lonely I don't have friends, but I think that I make people angry with deals. And I think that I could benefit from bringing white's philosophy in on those deals.
I saw a great Twitter thread a while ago from Ken Bauman, who's talks a lot about CEDH, and who was talking about how much of a difference it makes in like very high level CEDH tournaments that you're nice to play with. And literally like how people will win the game because they're kind of politicking in a way that feels really friendly and genuine and nice, and people kind of just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is probably looking at that white ideal now through a very like selfish lens of like, you can win more games, but seriously, you can win more games.
Shout out specifically a guy on the Australian CDH server called Strix. The amount of games I've witnessed him win just by being the nice guy at the table and not being dealt with.
Yep.
Amazing. Great Twitter thread. I'd actually like to see that.
It's an interesting one. I think, what would I do that White hates? Not a lot. But I think...
White really loves you.
Yeah, and I love White. I think that I would say White is the voice in my head that gets cranky when I miss a workout. In the gym.
The self-criticism within your head is white.
Is also white. I think white, as much as my structure really works within white, every time I miss on my structures that I build for myself, it is also white in my head that's going, Walt, if you don't go to the gym today, you'll become 5 kilos larger. Anyway, I don't know what the hell that was.
That's what white sounds like.
Exactly.
Good show.
It's British. Britain.
White is just colonialism British. That's what it is. Tally ho, fat.
Yeah, God. I think that something I don't really talk about a lot, but I have a really strong disdain for authority.
Yeah, it's weird.
I really hate it.
You in your life, you structure everything. But when you look at someone else structuring someone else, you hate that.
I guess I would say specifically like governments, you know, like I think that so many governments are so like the kind of person who rises to the top in government and becomes like a leader in the House of Parliament and, becomes the state leader or a federal leader.
The president.
Yeah. Any of these things tends to be the most power hungry and selfish people. And I don't think that results in very good rules and laws for everyone. And I am very much like a don't follow bad laws kind of person.
Yeah.
And I don't think that White would respect that. White would be very like, no, the laws are the way they are to keep us all safe. And I'd be like, that sounds very police state. Fuck you.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It's very 1984. No thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard the recent news story about Jordan de Vanderberg.
He got interviewed on the project.
Yeah.
So this is the guy who was listing
vacant houses, basically.
Vacant houses. So people could DM him and be like, hey, on my street, there is a house that is completely empty. I've seen it there for 10 years.
It's referred to as land banking. It's when a landlord that owns the property has no one in it because it's just an investment of land and they are not looking at renting it out or anything like that. But it still has a house on it.
They'll sell it in 10 years to a real estate developer for twice the money that they paid for it, and they'll consider that an investment in that way.
When someone is wanting to build a supermarket or something.
But understandably, we are facing a housing crisis in Victoria and Australia at the moment, and a cost of living crisis simultaneously, which is awful. And so, this guy's, and also in the state of Victoria at least, it is legal to squat in a property.
Yeah.
And so people can DM this guy, Jordan de Vanderberg, and be like, hey, this house on my street is vacant. And someone can then, he'll get in touch with someone and be like, hey, I know you're looking for a place. You can hang out in this particular location. The project interviewed him and were like, oh, you're breaking all these laws and stuff. And he was just like...
He's a lawyer. Do you know he's an actual lawyer?
Really?
Yeah.
I can believe that because he would just like very calmly dismantled every argument they threw at him.
There was one section where one of the hosts said, so what, are they just camping out in these vacant houses? And it's like, it's better than them camping out in the bloody streets.
He was just like, well, it's raining in Melbourne right now, so I think it'd be better to camp inside rather than outside. It's like,
insane.
Obviously. Anyway, so yes, I am firmly with Jordan de Vanderberg. Which I think White would be very maybe It depends how you look at white, but I think white would probably be opposed to that.
Yeah, because it would probably think, no, we've established rules in society.
Yeah, the rules are the way they are for a reason and all this nonsense.
Intro, look at us discussing topical news. All right, should we rank ourselves out of 10 secretly?
I'm got a pretty.
Are we allowing
one
point?
Here.
Like point something?
Or if you want.
Yeah, okay,
I mean,
I'm going to do a point.
The main purpose of it is just to get to the end and know the rank of the colors, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter in any
I've done a point.
other sense. Okay.
All right, moving on to blue.
It's 0.5, isn't it?
No.
0. He's like, can I do a point? And he's like, 0.01% white. No.
I'm a little white.
You're not 0.
I know.
I'm being silly. You're definitely not a 0.
Let's quickly recap blue.
Yes.
Blue wants knowledge, perfection. This is the color that we started talking about that's a little bit more individualist. It's looking a little bit more than specifically white of what its own life goals are. And it believes that its own life goal and its purpose should be the pursuit of whatever knowledge gets you what you want.
Yeah.
We discussed epistemology in this episode when we talk about blue. This is the theory of knowledge, very big area in philosophy. We also talked about blue's obsession with getting more, like just getting more knowledge, like just trying to find out more and more and more. We also talked about empiricism, rationalism in the context of skepticism.
Yeah.
So, there are, objectively correct ways of knowing something with empiricism of seeing is believing. Then there's rationalism, which is like, this isn't here, so therefore this must be true. Really interesting stuff. When it all plays out in Commander, we found out that blue has this feeling of control and foresight. You really feel in the driving seat when you're with blue. You know more than everyone. You're even potentially looking at your opponent's hands. There's lots of interaction.
You're scrying a lot in blue often. Yeah.
Foresight. There's lots of trickery and card draw, and all that kind of stuff is just so strong in this color.
Yep. Big time. Blue in our daily lives. What do you think? How are you blue in your life, James?
I think I am blue for the research aspect. I think blue would be really proud of me from just how much I research. And I'm talking like research, like for this series alone, Color Philosophy, I read so much.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy with everything I learnt along this journey of philosophy. But even in my daily lives, like before I buy something, I researched the ever-living hell out of all of my options.
Me too.
And I think we've talked about this before. Like when we were looking at buying the microphones, you did a lot of the research for the microphones, but you put it all in a document and I went through it and like followed your research because that made me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that blue definitely is the color that wouldn't make an action without thinking about it first.
No, definitely not.
And I think like even when I look at myself at work, I just recently ran a huge event on university campus.
Yeah, I saw you shared a photo. It was like 350,
more
450.
Yeah, huge event. So like before I ran that event, I was a huge year-on-year analysis kind of guy. Like we've ran this event in the past, and I was looking at data from like 6-7 years ago and looking at how the event has progressed so I could inform decisions like catering, like seat allocations, like all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I'm just a person that wants to understand more. And I think no more than just recently did I find this out when my boyfriend actually got diagnosed with ADHD. I didn't know anything about ADHD. So I just watched a ton of content, read a bunch of stuff online that taught me as the partner how to be a partner with someone with ADHD. And that was something I was really focusing on, was like, I need more knowledge about this.
Yeah, blue is very much like this, right? Blue is like, I detect an absence in myself. This is that individualist thinking again. In a good way, in this case, though, of like, I can see an area of improvement in myself, and the best way that I can improve is to have the knowledge to form tools around this thing. And so, you detected like, oh, like I know someone very, very closely in my life who has this aspect of themselves that I don't understand. I'm going to learn everything I can about it. That's a really good thing.
I think that's like the community aspect in blue. If there's any in blue,
Sure.
that's where it's at. It's like I want to understand those around me.
I'll master myself for the sake of everyone around me.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think finally for me, for every day, I love being in control. I'm always the person that's like, I'll drive us to the event. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be the person in the driving seat.
Yeah.
I'll decide what restaurant we go to.
I'll buy the tickets.
So they're in my Apple wallet.
Yeah,
I know where
yeah.
they are. I think when I give someone, and like this is my thing about blue, it's much more individualist than white. I really have to trust someone and know them for me to be like, yes, you can organize this for me. Like, for example, we just went to a comedy show recently.
Yeah, yeah.
You had the tickets.
I did have the tickets.
I'm not going to lie, was on edge. But the fact that you had the tickets and I know you really, really well, like I have a knowledge of Walt that is responsible, can keep tickets like on his person. I felt a lot more comfortable giving up that control.
You wouldn't think it would be hard to keep a hold of tickets, but if it was easy to keep a hold of tickets, I wouldn't have my day job.
Yes,
which is basically people calling and me going like, yep, I'll send those to you again via email, same email address as last time.
They're digital tickets, people. You can't physically lose digital tickets.
It's in your junk. Check your fucking junk. Anyway, sorry, a little bit of my day job in there. I think I'm very blue in my everyday life. I mean, I wrote an honors thesis.
Yeah, that's blue.
That's pretty blue. Look, I love learning stuff. I literally just, it's like my favorite thing to do is to learn new things.
You go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm really interested in this. Let me learn everything.
That bloody stream, people started talking about ants, and I spoke about ants for like 10 minutes. The other day, I did like basically exactly that at a party. I was talking about ants because there was a bunch of bugs in the air, and I was like, oh, these are actually alates. These are mating ants.
Walt's really fun at parties, guys. I promise. He's a really fun time.
Look, I'm good at sharing the information, I think, anyway. Electra tells me so, and she's got no stake in the matter.
You are, 100%.
Anyway, and I was telling everyone that they're alates and they're forming new colonies and they're probably this species and all this kind of stuff. And then someone was like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. So do you like study ants? And I was like, no. I've just read a lot on Wikipedia.
I just spent like until 4 a.m. reading, clicking links on Wikipedia.
Yep, I followed them all the way down and it just keeps on going. Yes, I'm with you as well that I will read every product review I possibly can before I buy something, which I think is very blue. And I also I really understand this blue concept of perfecting the self. Right, like we talked about perfection in blue, and the way that perfection in blue manifests is usually self-directed. I must learn more. I must know more. I must be more. This is very much how I live my life.
I've worked out in the past before, and I've like gotten into the gym and stuff like that. But like when I remember like in lockdown when I was like starting to run and all this kind of stuff, you came out of the woodwork with all of this knowledge about like if you want to improve at this specific skill, here is all of this knowledge that I have accumulated to get you there. Like, you talked about like when you're running, you do like fart licks and stuff like this. And like, fart lick is a real word, by the way. You can look that up. I just said it.
It's not what you think. It's not what you think.
It's not licking a fart. Don't worry about it. But yeah, you were like the one that was like, hey, you should look into this. You should look into this.
Yeah.
With your diet, be careful of this. Be careful of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something that I was like, wow, you really... If you're working out, you're working out with the knowledge of everything.
No, I'm very scientific, I would say, which I think is also very blue. Yes, it's a big thing of mine for sure. Commander. How do we play Commander like blue? Or for you, James, is there any ways you play Commander that aren't blue?
No. I think I have to include
with the in response tattoo on his forearm.
I think I have to include an emergent zone in every non-blue deck I play, just so I can play a little like blue. Look, I think the trickery and interaction and that kind of control seat that I have in Commander is like the thing that is most blue when I play. I am always the in response player. That is so blue. Like you said, it's tatted on my arm. I think the other thing that I do with blue, that is a little bit more subtle than just being the one in control and counterspelling, is I will always take like one more turn off from winning to try and make sure that I understand all of my potential lines and I find the best one. Like if I have a choice in a game of Commander where I'm looking at my hand, I'm looking at the board, I'm like, I could try and win now. And I have an 80% chance of winning. Or I could draw 5 cards and then see what my chances are after that.
Yeah.
I will always elect to draw those 5 cards.
This is very blue.
Yeah.
Right? This is like exactly also what we said was what could be blue's weakness in some cases was
Thinks
like
too much.
well, blue's like I want to have I want to know every possible outcome before I make a decision. And it's like you can't do that.
Yeah.
But I think in
life naturally has the unknown.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I think the positive side of this in Commander is this. Yeah, I think if you see a possible win but not a definitive win, it can be correct to draw some cards and take your time and go for like a 90% chance win instead of a 50% chance win on your next turn. Big
And I
time.
think in relation to winning as well, and well, actually, just before we move on to winning specifically, with interaction, I think the other thing that I really do that's blue is we interact. Blue players interact in ways that is like counterspelling, but not. And it's a really weird thing. So if someone's targeting my creature for removal, instead of counterspelling it, I'll do something tricky with the rules and I'll flicker it because I understand when it comes back in, it's not the same entity, so the target fizzles.
Gotcha.
That kind of stuff I love, and I will try and do that more than just the typical counterspell.
Which is almost more blue to me because
Yeah,
it's like
it is, right?
It's like I understand this thing well enough to outsmart you.
Yeah.
It's like, you didn't see that this could be possible.
I can do this, but with flair.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a counterspell, easy. I can flicker it instead.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm gonna give it ward 4. Like, I understand these things.
Yeah, I'm gonna first. This would be a fucking amazing little sequence. I'm first gonna cast Mana Sink on you, so you have to tap all your lands and empty your mana pool. Then I'm gonna give it ward 1.
Yeah.
Ooh, screw you!
You can't pay the ward. Yeah.
The other thing, when I'm talking about win cons, I'm a huge fan of alternate win cons. I love combos. I think blue personified would be a combo player.
Yep.
They love seeing how the rules can be perfected and like really broken,
Manipulated. Yeah.
Yep. I love mill. I love instant win kind of stuff. Like, I'm a big fan. Like, I play CEDH. I think Thassa's Oracle is just cool. Like, you know, like it is a bit boring, but I think the fact that there are ways to interact and win a game of Commander with 3 mana is impressive. Like, that's just really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I even love stuff that's like instant win cons with just like super hard restrictions to get to. Like, you have to have... what's the happily ever after win con where you have to have a permanent of each color type. And if it's the like spell when you cast it, it's kind of like coalition victory, but
bit fairer.
bit fairer. I think I love doing that kind of stuff in Commander, and that's very blue.
Definitely. How do I play Commander like blue? I think this is a shorter list. I love drawing cards. We talked about it in the last episode. Both of us feel really strongly about drawing cards. I just love having access to more things. I like thinking more about what I can do and thinking through my turn and looking at all the things in my hand and going like, ooh, there's options available to me. I think that's a very blue thing. I think you could make an argument for certain colors being like, no, I must stick to my strategy and just go directly towards it. Blue's like, ooh, but I could maybe do this, then this, and then this. And
what if we put this card third from the top?
Yeah. And what if I bait out the counterspell? Like, there's that thinking that happens there that I really like. And I think I would also say this is not so much playing Commander, but I think as a tinkerer, I'm trying to perfect my decks in the same way that I think that blue is trying to perfect itself.
Another thing you've identified, which is Commander focused, but outside of playing an actual game. Really good one, I
really think as a tinkerer, your goal is to not necessarily perfect, like make it the best, like, the winningest deck, but like to make it the purest expression of what it was, right? Like I've talked about this before, but like, if I'm looking at my Gandalf deck, it's like, I'm trying to find the most, directly to the artifact flickering kind of thing that I like to do. How do I eliminate all these like extraneous kind of things so that I'm getting down to the purest expression of the deck?
That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't considered I think I'm thinking about this as like sitting at a game of Commander.
Yeah.
But as we know, Commander is so much more than just it's building the deck. It's the Rule Zero conversation.
And look, to be fair, I was stretching because I don't play Commander very blue.
That's fair.
I've gone outside the rules to answer the question.
To fill in the bit.
I hope I'll get half a mark.
What does blue hate things that we do, or what can we learn from blue? Look, I think blue would probably hate the fact that in life I do take a lot of blind leaps of faith. I did say that I research every product before I buy, yes, but one of those products I bought was an electric skateboard. And I fly down the street on that thing.
Sure.
And that's just silly. Like all my adrenaline sports that I really love, I think Blue is like, you know that's dangerous. You know the statistics on this, right? And even with like further stuff with like, you know, I drink like alcohol. Well, you're teetotal, but like I drink booze. That's a bad thing for you. I know that. It's scientifically proven. I'm very educated on this.
Yeah.
But I will still impulsively, and especially when I'm around, and I think this is the other thing, is I'm a bit of a, if I'm around a group of people, like I'm thinking specifically when I'm like up at the snow and I've got all my snow mates around me and they're like, let's go on a night of drinking and let's snowboard next morning at 5 a.m. I'm like, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
I think Blue would look at me being like, not manipulated, what would you say? Like easily persuaded, kind of coercible.
Yeah.
There's a word that I'm looking for here.
Sure. I think Blue would probably look at you and go like you're letting your enjoyment come before your knowledge.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
And you know better than this.
Yes,
I
that's
think
probably
it's
the
like,
way that it would be looking at it. Yeah.
You're better than this because you know better than this.
Yeah.
I think that's what Blue would be disappointed in with me.
Sure.
And I think the lesson there is probably just like, consider my options a little bit more, because like sometimes like genuinely you should really think more. I know that that's the flaw of Blue, but there are lots of situations where if you just took 5 seconds to think about what you were going to say before you said it, it can change a lot.
I mean, this is the basis behind cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Yes.
If you can think and understand the way that your brain is approaching things, you will probably just be able to think your way out of them.
Oh my God, I've just started doing this in therapy. I just realized that the
brain,
lesson I'm learning is listen to my therapist.
It's me. I'm no. What would Blue hate about how I do things? This is not something I talk about very often, but I do have like a little bit of spiritual thinking that comes through in certain ways. I think, especially when it comes to performance, there's like things that happen in a theater space that you can't really explain. And I kind of do believe that science can't explain them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that Blue would go, no, science can explain everything.
We've just not figured it out yet. We just haven't found what can explain it.
Eventually we'll figure it out. And there are parts of my life that I'm like, no, we don't get it yet. And that's okay. And I think that's a very green thing that we'll go into a bit later. But I think Blue would look at that and go, no, that's not right. You just haven't thought about it enough. Rank out of 10.
Yeah, I just did mine. I'm honestly,
are you gonna change yours? No?
After talking about what I do that Blue hates, it's actually skewed my view on if I'm blue or not.
Bump down a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we have 3 colors left to talk about, but before that, I think we better take a thrifty interlude.
Yeah, imagine this like the colorless in Magic. Like, you know, with all of these colors, they've got like a lot of philosophy, a lot of thinking behind them. Colorless is just like, yeah, it's colorless. It's whatever, man.
That's
the break that we're having.
I'm opting out of the system.
Yeah. Anarchy! Oh, that's red. Sorry.
No, damn it. Yeah, I wish I'd known that you were going to say that because I could have picked a colorless card. God damn it.
Remember, I don't plan these things.
I know. It's the best and the worst thing about this. Look, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. As is tradition, I'll be performing a monologue. And this week, the card is brought to life in monologue form from the perspective... no, that's a lie. It's not a perspective of someone on the card. This is, God, how do I explain this? This week, the card is the concept of the card is placed in a different context and a monologue comes out of that. You'll get it later.
That is not in our template of these episodes.
I know. It's not a usual one. You'll find out.
Strap yourselves in for a personification of whatever the hell Walt just said of the card Wild Ricochet. For 2 red and a red, you get an instant that says you may choose new targets for target instant or sorcery spell. Then copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Troubadour is coasting down the left flank, ball tucked under arm, but Fazzato is sprinting to meet her. 10 metres now, 5. Fazzato closing in, and Troubadour has spotted her. There you can see Troubadour is eyeing the goal and contemplating the kick. 3 metres now, and Fazzato is slowing down. Does she have what it takes to take down Troubadour? Closing, and she has reached Troubadour and a great clashing of limbs, and the ball is spilled free, though all players in red and blue are at a loss as to where it has gone. Is it out of bounds? Who has the ball? The crowd are really getting into it now and have spotted the ball. I don't believe this, folks. A member of the crowd has stolen Pizzato's uniform in the ensuing confusion and is plummeting with all their might towards the blue goal. The left flank is wide open now, with the players still trying to find the ball. And I do not believe there is a single rule that prohibits the use of spectator players provided they are in uniform. This might be the best match of Weird Wizard ball game that I have seen in these 24 years, folks. The spectator is trotting along, and the players have finally cottoned on. I cannot deny, this spectator does not look nearly fast enough to evade the players, but they have a clear 70 metres of distance on the rest of the pack. It seems impossible that the spectator will not score a goal. 50 metres out now, 40. They are straightening for the kick, boot to ball, and it has soared smack bang right in the middle of the goalposts. The crowd erupts. They haven't seen anything like this. Today, the question on all of our lips, who is this mystery player? They're removing their cowl, and it is Jace Bellerin, folks. An eruption of booze in the arena today. The rules of Weird Wizard ball game explicitly forbid him from taking part, owing to his tendency to forget what team he is playing for. Get budgeted!
Oh my god. Have you ever considered sports commentating as a career?
I'm flattered.
That was impressive. I felt like I was sat around on the weird 1950s radio listening to that game live. That was fantastic.
The vibe I was going for. I appreciate that. Admittedly, I don't think that sports commentators usually have a script. But
That's
you know,
true. If they did, sports sucks.
Yeah, sports would suck if it was scripted.
I see now what you mean about wild ricochet with the ball being floated.
Well,
okay,
he gets it.
I get it.
Yes, you can catch those every Thursday in the Greensboro Commander Community Discord server where we hang out with our playgroup. They're written in text form in the Thrifty Thursdays channel every Thursday.
Heck yeah. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah,
we are going round
color time.
the color wheel. We just did white and blue. Now we're on to black.
Black.
Black. What does black want? This was actually the easiest to define if you remember in the episodes. Black wants power. All-encompassing power.
Yep.
Just envision Jeremy Clarkson driving a Jaguar. Power! Look, in that episode, we discussed how black was not the evil color. This was something that a lot of people...
Important to clarify.
Yeah, misinterpret about black, but it is the most selfish color, for sure. It very much... it employs a political realism structure was the kind of philosophical tangent that we looked at in that episode, and how it's a really big fan of capitalism and pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of thing.
Very opposed to its enemy color white that we had already talked about at that point.
Shocking. They're completely on opposite sides of the color wheel, and a lot of people think it's a white versus black game.
Yeah.
It was very easy to identify. And then when we spoke about it in Commander, we highlighted that it is just unstoppable. Like the feeling of removing stuff anywhere, like the card murder is literally in black.
Yeah.
Like it just kills whatever it wants. The other thing that it feels like is when you kill something or when you have something that's get killed, it's never truly gone. Black is the color of reanimation that'll squeeze everything out of the dead just to get every bit of value. And that is a really great feeling in Commander.
Definitely. So how are me and you like black in our everyday lives, would you say, James?
I feel like I am actually quite black. I am a hell of a driven guy, and a driven guy for success and a driven guy for, promotions and all this kind of stuff. I am usually the one who, specifically for Get Commanders, that sings our praises to potential sponsors. Like actually just this afternoon, I've got a call with a new potential sponsor for the podcast. I think that that's a really black thing to do.
Definitely.
I've found that when we're at game stores, you're like, yeah, I have a podcast. And I hear you say that from across the room and I sprint over and I'm like, it's fucking incredible. You should listen to it. Walt does this amazing thing at the middle of every episode. You should definitely listen to it.
The spiels that you'll receive from me or James in a game store are very different.
Yes. And I feel like I'm more of the sales. I hate using the word salesman because it feels sleazy, but
there's a real merit here. I don't want to diminish the fact fact that it's really good to be proud of what you do. And I think you're really proud of what you do.
And I think that's very Black. And
Yeah.
I think like being like, no, what I'm doing is worthwhile and you should know about it.
I mean, literally, when you talk about like talking with sponsors, a lot of our conversations with sponsors is like, here's why we're worth your money.
Yeah.
Right? Like they literally have to quantify to them your monetary value as a podcast. The reason James does a lot of this stuff, one, he's fucking great at it, as we're talking about right now, but also I am terrible at this. I'm like, we've got a podcast. It's kind of okay, I guess. And James is like, here's why we're the best podcast in Australia right now. You know, like you have to kind of talk that way if you're going to convince someone to part with their money.
And I think Black is that like kind of ruthless attitude. And
Yeah.
I do have a lot of that. Like even like in my career at work, I'm a bit of a ladder climber. I don't want to brag, but I've gotten a few promotions in my time.
Yep.
And I don't think that even like now, like I'm in a job now that like most 26-year-olds would kill for. Like I am really genuinely in a position that I'm getting a real great salary, well above what I should be earning at my age and all this kind of stuff. But I'm still not content. And I don't think I will ever be truly like, yep, I'm happy. I'll sit here until retirement.
That's kind of Black, right?
Yeah.
This constant ambition, you know, this drive.
And I think,
more.
ambition is a word that I like using because that feels more positive.
Yeah.
I'm also definitely the kind of person that will use things all the way until they die.
Yeah.
And I think that's very Black. Like, I really despise, like, hate the people that are like, I just bought the new iPhone, even though the only new feature is that it's in a different color and it cost me $2,000.
Stuff all of that, man. It is so bad for the environment to consume products that way. And also, you have a perfectly functional thing. Use that perfectly functional thing.
Like, I literally will use something until it's on its last legs, until I properly replace it.
Definitely.
I'm even with like, I'm such a big fan of like leftovers from dinner. I'm a huge Tupperware guy.
Yep.
Like, and I think just that kind of like attitude of like all resources are important is very Black.
It's interesting. I can see the Black approach to this. It's not something I would immediately associate with Black, but I see where you're coming from, definitely.
It's like the resource management part of it. It's like, I've got this and I may as well use it.
Well, that's the thing, is it's like Black will use anything that it has access to. And I guess the unsaid part of that I've never really considered is like, I'll also use them to within an nth degree, you know? Like, I guess we do see this in Magic because we see Black use the graveyard, right? Like, Black's like, hey, rampaging Baloths, not done with you yet. Come back for more.
You think you've gone to the afterlife?
Yep.
Get fucked. Get on the
Reanimation
battlefield.
time. Yeah, no, for sure. I think, how am I Black in my everyday life? I do think I am very ambitious about this podcast and about my performance career, especially. Like, I do aim to, not necessarily for fame, but for like respect and for...
We were just talking about that in the Thrifty Interlude.
No, I really aim to be someone who is known and who is respected and who... I want to be someone who, in terms of theatre, who people look at and go like, Walt makes really great work. Like, here's the kind of things that Walt makes and here's why I like them. Like, I don't need that to be someone extremely famous. I just need that. I'm driving for that respect. You know?
Every time you say that you love a Thrifty interlude, dear listener, that fills Walt's Black tank up just that little bit.
It's a huge thing. Like, I'm striving to be better in everything that I do, for sure. As we sort of spoke about in Blue. In that same vein, I push myself extremely hard in every facet of my life. Like, I have injured myself in the gym many times.
Yeah. I'm the type of person to use I think we're both the type of person to use a phone until it dies and then get a new one.
Yeah.
You're the type of person to use its body to the absolute limit until it cracks so you can get as much out of yourself as a physical being as possible.
Yeah. I think that this is kind of the way that my ambition is shaped. Like, I think it is still self-oriented. Maybe it's like less of that like quote selfish thing that we associate with Black. But yeah, I do think I have this real drive to like, I've got to be the best that I can be. And I do think that's very Blue, and I'm probably more Blue.
It's probably leaning on that
I'm
blue
leaning
side,
more Blue in that way that I do it. But I still think you have to acknowledge that Black is about like ambition and drive. And I do think I have ambition and drive.
Yeah. All right. At a commander table.
Sure.
Or, as you've been pointing out, the deck building process
In
or the
the
rules
concept of Commander.
Concept of Commander. I am a huge fan of reusing the same spell over and over and over and over and over again.
Big time. You love your graveyard recursion. Even in like
friggin' love
spells
it.
decks and stuff.
I think the thing that I love is the fact that I have access to more than just what's in my hand. Like, my hand is like 7 cards at most, most of the time, where my graveyard could be like 20 to 50 different options.
Yeah.
And I think this is very blue as well. Like I'm looking for those pieces of knowledge and advantage.
Yeah.
But it's really black in that it wants to reuse, reduce, recycle. But it's really looking at squeezing everything out. Like I calculated in my Savine deck, I think I have the potential to reuse the same spell 10 times in my Savine deck.
10 times?
Yeah.
Like, cast it, flashback, I guess you get it again with Savines, that's 3.
Yep.
Then I'm guessing you use that card
That pulls it from Exile.
Pull from Eternity.
Pull from Eternity.
Puts it back from your exile into your graveyard again.
Correct.
Return it to your hand with some kind of
Correct.
ability. Cast it from your hand again. Now you're at 4.
Yep.
Cast it from the graveyard again with exile, and then I guess you're trying to flashback pull from Eternity.
Well, this is the tricky thing. I think that you could get into some really strong loops with my Savine deck where you can keep flashing back pull from Eternity.
Yeah.
However, there is another card that returns something from exile called Runic Repetition.
Oh,
so it's
so
just
you've got many ways to
constantly-
keep the engine going.
It's insane.
Gotcha.
And I guess I'll point out the thing that white hates that I do that black would like me doing in Commander is that I will manipulate politics.
Yeah, this is very black.
This is very black. It's very selfish. It's very like, no. I know the resources that I've got, and one of them is your terms that you laid out, and I will squeeze every ounce of benefit I can get out of that deal as I possibly can.
It's like looking at the words of the deal and going like, what's the maximum amount that I can get that is still within the terms of this deal? Whereas, I think that white way is more going like, okay, the spirit of the deal is this, and therefore I'll act in this way. Black is going, I technically agreed to this.
And now I'll finally get to say it. That wins games.
It does.
I will point out that like in that space battle that we had, like doing that gets you over the line. And like you have to be... I remember once when I used to race motocross, and this is why, funnily enough, I stopped racing motocross. So maybe I'm not as black as I thought I was in my everyday life.
Sure.
But my dad once said, you have to be prepared to ride over someone's neck before you give up a race.
Oh
if
my
you want
God.
that like full... But keep in mind, my dad was saying this in like, if you want to keep doing this and get better and better and better at it, that is the attitude you have to take in.
Oh, right.
And
if you are striving to be like a, tournament winning kind of person, this is the mindset that you will need. So it was more of a cautionary thing.
Yeah, my dad was
Going,
like, look, you can keep riding, but if you want to win,
That's
this is
the
the mindset
mindset
you
you'll
have
need.
to have.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really remember my dad saying, and I was like, maybe I don't want to ride for that reason.
Yeah,
and then I
sure.
ended up doing enduro rides and just riding around Australia. So
Hey.
much funner.
I like that solution.
Yeah.
How do I play Commander like Black? I think I can be very me focused in my game plans. I'm so in love with like my deck synergizing and doing fun stuff. Like that's what I'm chasing in Commander, and I'm sort of selfish in that way where I can be a bit self-indulgent, where I forget to win.
Yeah.
Is one way this manifests.
I think I'm going to pull something that's outside of the game play.
Sure.
You're a great goldfisher. You goldfish a lot. And
Yeah.
specifically with your new Gandalf deck, I've seen you play at a game of Commander where you're doing things and like, oh, I goldfished this the other day. I want to see it happen in a game live.
Yeah.
Might not be the best thing to do.
No, but it's what I want to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing that the other way this manifests is I forget about other people's boards, and I can miss that I'm just like dead to lethal. It doesn't happen as much anymore, but especially my early days of playing Commander, I was really like, oh my God, I'm doing all these fun things. And I'd like untap and move to my turn and like look at my hand and go like, oh my God, I finally get to do this thing. And then it's like pass to the next player. And then they're like, okay, cool, I win. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, right. I also need to not lose. Like,
I have 3 opponents. It's
Yeah.
not all about me. It's not Walt's story of Commander.
No,
Yeah.
and that's probably the most black thing I do, I think, when I'm playing Commander. All right, black hates. What can we learn from black?
Look, I think the thing that I've started to realize more currently with myself is that I actually am starting to respect the time off that I have, and really, because you know me, like I've got another tattoo of a candle that's burning at both ends and extinguished at one end to represent burnout.
Yeah.
And this is something that I struggled with for a really long time because I think I took too much of Black's philosophy. So I think Black would now look at me being like, why are you taking time off? You can, you have to push yourself, keep going. Like,
Yeah.
But I think this is the lesson, and it's like that cautionary tale. Again, it's this, Black is fantastic at giving you that drive and giving you that, like, ambition to get what you want.
Yep.
But you have to be really careful with it. you have to make sure that you are using it for the right reasons and not in this self-destructive way.
Yeah, you've got to pace yourself, I think, is the thing. And I think that black is always aiming for... So are you saying this is a way that you are like black? Or
I think this is a way that black
or
is...
something you can learn from black?
I think... I'm saying that black hates the fact that I now take breaks.
Right.
And I'm saying that I need to take breaks and taking breaks is good because I've learned from being all black and being just black that that's a bad thing.
That's so interesting because I think you could also, maybe this is that black's got parts to it as well. I think you could also make an argument that black has goals, right?
Yeah.
And so, black... You could maybe speculate that black could look at the fact that you have goals in your life and go, actually, the most effective way for you to get there, and maybe even the fastest way for you to get there, is to occasionally take breaks.
Rest and recover kind of vibes. Yeah.
I guess, be. I don't know. I see what you mean. Like, black also is just like, get me there now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
Maybe that's because I also lean a little bit more on the red side.
Well,
but we'll
go into
soon.
that, definitely.
I think the other lesson that I think I really want to learn from black's good attributes is that like we said with white, I am very much a team player. I will always jump in to try and make the situation best for everyone. And sometimes that's at detriment to myself.
Yeah.
I think that I often will be like, oh, that doesn't really work for me, but it works for everyone else. That's fine. We'll go with this plan.
It's good to speak up.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to be that black magic card that goes, no, this is what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't, that's not what I want. Like doing this is actually going to make me uncomfortable or whatever it might be. I think that that's something that black does really, really well. And it speaks for itself in a lot more conversations than white would.
Definitely. Look, I do a lot of things that black would hate most of my life, I suspect. But I think my main thing is actually basically almost exactly what you just said. I could definitely learn to be a lot more direct about getting what I want from the world.
Yeah.
I'm very passive, very self-effacing, very happy to sit back and go like, eventually I'll get what I need or something.
Which people love you for it, but it is to your own detriment.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying I want to erase that part of me. Like I think that is a part of me, and I agree. I am happy that is a part of me. But equally, like in the performing arts, for instance, you kind of have to be someone who can stand up and go, hey, I'm a fucking great actor. You should hire me for this reason. Like, it's a very competitive industry. You go to a bunch of auditions.
Motherfucker.
Yeah, this is how great I am. And like, when you're writing your CV, you go like singing ability. Like, I've never been formally trained as a singer. But I can carry a tune.
I've heard you in the shower.
Yeah. But like when you're describing singing ability and you've got like that kind of capability, as a performer, you've kind of got to be like, I'm a great singer.
Yeah. And you can't just go like, I can carry a tune. It's like, no, I can sing on stage.
I can sing. I can sing a song for you. Like if you give me the time, I'll learn the lyrics, I'll nail it, kind of thing.
And I'll put more effort into,
So I think I need to learn to be more direct about being like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want from the world. This is what I want from you personally. Like, this is what kind of person I'm going to be. More direct and a little bit more selfish.
I think this is the color that we differ the most on, personally.
I think it's close between this and maybe the next color.
Okay. Well,
but I think you're probably right though. I think it's probably black.
But have you ranked yourself out of 10 for black?
I have.
Done.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Red.
Yeah, let's look at red. Like Freddie Mercury, red just wants to break free.
Hey, James can carry a tune too.
No, I cannot. I occasionally will hit like I'll go like falsetto and like go really high and it'll like sound decent and then I'll like try and actually do it.
Yeah.
Sounds terrible. But yeah, red, like Freddie Mercury, just wants to break free. Freedom is all red wants. It definitely wants to break the chain. And when we spoke about red, we specifically spoke about how it's probably the color that thinks the least about its philosophy.
Yeah, we kind of went into the psychology of red, right? Like we actively were like, I don't know that red, well, we were a bit differing on this, but we were like, red might not necessarily have a philosophy the way that you can articulate it in white, blue, and black.
But you made a great point in that red episode of, does philosophy really need to be a cognitive thought?
Can you have a world philosophy that is to forego having a world philosophy?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you probably can.
And that's what red is. And so we, instead of looking at red's cognitive thought about how it lives its life, we actually dived into the psychology of red and we looked at a research paper in that episode, if you remember, and we looked at how red is the emotional color statistically by people's reactions to it. And then when we looked at it in Commander, we looked at the keyword haste, really, about how it's all about the now, all about going for it. If blue,
being aggressive.
If blue is about thinking about your options, red is about throwing that to the wind and just trying it.
Just go for it.
We looked at impulse draw and how like that's like it's great card draw, but you have to use it now, otherwise it goes away. It's go all in.
Yes.
That's the color of red.
Go all in and go in now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So how we like red in our everyday lives? Well, if I've been trying to avoid like saying that that's who I think I am at the core for a really long time because we've been referencing this. I act on impulse so often, especially when I'm surrounded by, like I was saying before, like my snowboard buddies. My boyfriend is very red as well. If I'm surrounded, if I'm in an environment, I am just impulsive. I will do everything and anything that I feel like. And that ranges from, going out and partying all night. That's a very impulsive thing. But it also translates to me like, I'm tired. I'm taking a nap. That's my decision right now.
Yeah, this is how I feel right now. I'm tired right now, so I will sleep.
Yeah, and I think that is like such a red thing of just like, what do you feel? Translate that into an action. Do that action.
Yeah,
and it's like that's red's thought process, and that's how I feel like my thought process is a lot most of the time. And I think that the kind of like obvious things that are in life that are so red for me is I've already mentioned the adrenaline sports that I love, motocross, skateboarding, like snowboarding, all of these things. I love living on the edge. Adrenaline is a really fun chemical that runs through my brain. Watching horror movies, I get a kick out of that. Just all of this stuff that makes my heart race, I love. And I think that all boils down to the fact that I am just a little bit of an impatient person. I am very much a now-orientated guy, and I think it is, we'll talk about it a little bit, but it comes to my detriment quite a lot. Burnout is a very big thing. I mean,
burn hard and fast.
Burn hard and fast. That candle disappears. But, like even with the podcast and stuff like that, I'm like, what if we did this in the next month, Walt? And like, what if we did this now? Like, what if we were like, flying to LA and meeting with the professor? Like, it's like, it's okay, slow down. Like, it's great to have all those black ambitions, but when you combine that with red's impatient and like absolute hot burning fire, that's why when we look at Rakdos cards, it's this chaos and this like just festival of desire and all this kind of
hedonism
stuff.
And yeah, definitely.
Even when I spoke about that, I was like, really good. Like,
it's animated. The fire in the belly is real. How am I like red in my everyday life? I do think it's important for me to highlight that I am a very creative person. Mark Rosewater has specifically said before that to him, blue/red is the colors that encompass creativity the most. We saw this very clearly in Strixhaven. The Prismari were the artists, poets, theater makers of Strixhaven. So I think it's really important to highlight that, like, in my daily life, I spend a good chunk of it being creative. Like, I have a daily movement practice that I engage in that's improvisational in nature. Obviously, I'm rehearsing for a play at the moment. I write Thrifty Thursdays. Like, I do goofy skits and everything.
But also, it's something to say that red is the emotional color, and a lot of your creative practice comes from what you feel. You can't be an artist without putting what you feel into it.
You absolutely must. It's like essential. You can't really make art otherwise, and that's basically why AI art will always be soulless and empty to me. It's lacking this pretty much. And I will say that maybe this is the only part of my life that this is really true of, but in my creative life, I really trust my gut. The last show that I did last year, I did an improvised show, and I chose the collaborator I worked with just based on a gut feeling. I literally messaged him after we were working on another show together. Charla, with Two Tame Runners. I did an improvised show last year. I chose Charla because I was working on another project with him, and I was like, hey, I just messaged him out of the blue, and I was like, hey, do you want to do a project together? Let's just do something for Fringe this year. I think it'd be fun. And that's really red, I think.
And that's also very rare for you.
Well, that's the thing, is I think that this is the part of my life that really I see the most red in.
That's where it comes out.
It comes out, I think. And maybe that's part of why I can be so not red in the rest of my life, is because I have this very clear channel for all this passion and everything.
Yeah.
And look, I will say that the way that I'm creative is very red in nature. I do a lot of improv, which is very in the now. You have to think on your feet.
Yeah, there's no planning for improv.
Nope, you can't really plan anything.
Yeah.
Or if you plan, you usually have to throw it out at the window as soon as you start performing.
And if you have got a plan, that's not improv.
Yeah. And look, when I write, I plan a little bit for some things, but a lot of how I write is just about reading things out loud. When I'm doing the Thrifty Thursdays, the reason that they I think perform so well is I read them out. I'm like,
when you're writing, you perform it as
Electra
well.
turns to me and is like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just writing Thrifty Thursdays," because she can hear me going and then trouble go to the left lane. She's like hearing this out of the corner of her ear. She's like, "Are you okay?" I'm just like, "Yeah, I'm just writing Thrifty Thursdays." And she's like, "Gotcha."
Completely fine.
Say
That's
no more.
a normal Thursday in the Walt household.
Yeah, so that's, I would say, creatively, I'm really in that, in the now, in the impulse, in the emotion of it.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, Commander.
Sure.
How do we play Commander like red? Oh my God, I think that I know that I take my time and think about stuff. That's my blue. But when I win and when I actually go for the win, that's my red. I do the explosive play thing so often in Commander. I go from 0 to 100 so quick.
It's interesting. I would say we're both quite patient players, but I think you wait so that you can explode. And I sort of wait in a very I'm ready. And I'm
like
slowly
a cat in the night
building.
waiting to pounce.
Yeah, well, and I think I build in a very kind of typical sort of mono-white way of deploy small threat, until eventually the total value is so high. Yeah, that. But even then, I don't often play that many of those cards. A lot of my decks just win through sheer attrition. It's just I have enough
actually, that's a good
to
point.
win, to attack with. I don't have any sort of overrun effects in my Gandalf deck, because usually if you've got 8 Mir and a Mir Battlesphere, that's enough.
That'll do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that just looking at some of the cards I've ran in the past that I really love playing, like Dockside Extortionist, Commune with Lava is a card that I love.
It's a huge impulse draw spell, yep.
Treasonous Ogre, pay 3 life, add a red mana.
Big time.
That can go you can go from not a lot of mana to as much life you got in a turn.
This is very much in that Rakdos camp we were talking about for you, definitely, because paying life is very black as well.
Yeah, and I think it's huge advantage all at once is my way of playing. I do like the small incremental value engines that you build up on the board, but I'm a huge fan of explosive turns, and I really do the thing of all right, I have to win now, or I guarantee will lose on my next turn. I will.
You're
deploy.
happy to nope out of a game if it meant you went for it. I think is what I'll say.
Going out in a blaze of glory is my kind of style of
You're
losing.
totally happy with that.
Yeah, I actually feel really sad if I lose a game where I didn't do a blaze of glory kind of thing.
I've seen that. The most disappointed I've seen you after a game is I didn't get to go for it.
Yeah, I had no opportunity. And I think this is another thing that I'm really red with. I hate stacks. And this is something that we spoke about in our hot takes kind of episode of or our admission episode. I can't remember what we called that one, but I really don't like stacks. And I'm the type of player that's obviously in CDH it's fine, but in casual I'm if it's hard stacks, soft stacks, I'm okay with. Go listen to that episode and I'll explain more. But if there is something that says I can't do something in a casual game, I hate it.
Yeah.
If someone plays a rule of law type effect, infuriating.
Big time.
And I think that that's really red.
I think I completely agree with
It's
you.
all about breaking the chain, and that's literally a chain being put on you in a game of Commander.
Yeah. It's interesting that my one and only CDH deck is a stacks deck. I'm so sorry, James.
Definitely gets me hot under the collar, for sure.
I see now why you really are planning on building me that new version of the stacks list that wins. You just want to be out of the stacks.
I just want you to end the game
sooner.
Look, I think that in CDH my mindset is different.
Sure.
I'm talking from a very casual perspective.
That's fair.
Here. I think
fair.
My CDH mindset is, look, that is a viable strategy.
Yeah.
That is something that you're doing.
And you enjoy the challenge of stacks. I've seen you be okay, how do I win here?
What's the thing that I need to remove that unlocks me me specifically, but doesn't unlock my opponents.
Which is a really great way to approach stacks, by the way, and will win you games. If you kind of go like, okay, what's the specific thing I need to answer on the stacks player's board to win through the stacks?
Yeah.
And how can I leave as many of the other effects in place to deal with my opponents at the same time?
Do I care about Janeth Magistrate, or do I really care about the Grafdigger's Cage? Or and I think that not only will it win you games to have this approach, but it will make you feel so much happier in life. You will walk away from that game a little bit happier than you were when you entered it.
Definitely.
So how do you play? Do you know what the color red is in Commander?
I don't think I play red in any capacity in Commander. Like, I play the color red, but I think every deck that I play that contains red, I'm in the other one of these colors that it's in. You know, like, I don't have a mono red deck, and I have a blue-red deck that is very base blue, like very, very, very base blue. I have a, what other decks do I have? I have a Mardu deck that literally has 2 red cards in it, one of which is the commander.
Yeah.
It's just really not the part of Magic that I deviate towards.
Can I make an argument that your creativity in deck building is a little red?
You could. This is the really tough thing.
Because like when you build a deck, you put a lot of emotion in it. Like you're like, I'll make this work. This dumb idea I'll make work somehow.
And I do build very Vorthos decks a lot of the time, which I would say is a more red. Like it's an emotional way of building a deck.
You're not building to win. You're building to like represent something. You're building for a different purpose.
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know.
A tiny argument there.
Like, look, it's like Mark Rosewater said, we're all 5 color. So I definitely have some red in me, but I don't see a lot of it when it comes to specifically playing Commander, I don't think.
All right, well, what do we do that red hates then? Because I feel like you've got a lot to talk about here. Do you want to go first this time?
Sure. Look, I think I've spent a lot of my life ignoring and or suppressing my emotions. And I could learn to prioritize them a lot more. I've only just probably in the last 6 months properly learned how to vent.
Yep.
And only because my partner has like practically begged me to be like, please keep venting.
Keep going. You're not upsetting me. Keep going.
Yeah, because it's really new to me to be like, oh wow, if I just express all these emotions, I can actually let them go.
Yeah. I mean, look, actually, in the short time that we've known each other in our lives, I have seen you improve on that.
Yeah, I think I'm on the path to improving it for sure. But I still
it's a lesson from Red you could learn.
I over intellectualize, I think, and this is probably something that Red would hate as well about how I live my life. I'm obviously very structured and very intellectual with the way that I do things. I don't think Red would like either of those things. And I think Red would probably not like my aversion to drugs and alcohol. For reference, I have never had any of either.
No. Walt's completely teetotal.
Yep, and have in my whole life for a variety of reasons. But yes, I think Red would be like, no, have some fun, live your life. I don't think Red would be... I don't think Red would hate it, but Red would be very like, come on, just one time.
Yeah, I definitely am now seeing why you thought this was the color we'd differ most on.
Yeah, there's aspects of Red that I feel we differ a lot on. Like, again, like I have some Red in me, like the creativity thing is real, but a lot of this I think I look at and go, it's not me.
Yeah.
How about you?
Look, I think it's interesting here that like I've highlighted my default position, which is this like impulse, just act on instinct and just go for it and like live your life kind of thing. But I think the thing that Red will hate is the fact that I'm trying so hard to do what White was wanting me to do. And like, I think that I'm not going to lie, I look up to you a lot. Well, I genuinely do. There's a lot in you that I aspire to, and I try and put things in my life that are mimicking you in a way of like, I'm going to try and structure my meals this week by planning every meal that I eat for the next, couple of weeks. And I'll do that for a couple of days, and then my Red will take over and go, I
want some of this.
Have a takeaway.
Yeah.
But I think that Red would be really disappointed in me even trying to structure myself like that.
Right. Red would be like, no, just do more of what you want.
Yeah. But I guess the lesson that I'm taking from that is that there is a balance in me that I can find. And I need to find the way of building a structure that makes me feel like I'm not pinned down. Because like we were saying before in Casual Commander, how I hate stacks. Yeah. If I say I'm not allowed to eat this, I'm not allowed to do this, I'm not allowed to be on TikTok for this amount of time, I will hate that. And it'll make me feel like crap. So I need to build this is the thing that I'm learning from red is how to be better at being white. Weirdly, it's like
red gives you the emotional core to build your structures from. Yeah,
to give me some structure that I feel comfortable in. Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, I've always flattered that you look up to me in that way. I don't plan any of my meals except the ones that you see. Like I have the shake, the protein shake every day, and I have the same muesli and like the nuts and the fruit and everything.
I'm usually with you in the morning, so
that's true. You see,
see the muesli and the morning shake,
which are the very rigid ones. But I'm shocking with planning. Like I've been really bad with cooking lately. For instance, like we get a lot of takeaway. I eat a lot of food at work because I haven't planned to bring something to work. So a lot.
That makes me feel great because I'm not. A few listeners might know this, but I currently am housing my boyfriend's little sister.
Yes.
And I have donned a bit of a father figure role.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm doing a lot of home cooking and a lot of leftovers.
It's a great thing to do.
It's
a great thing to do. I want to be clear on that. But yeah, like there's. I personally have tried to move a bit away from structure in food because I think it can result in some bad habits. I think planning meals is a really good one. Like being like, 100%. Okay, I'm going to cook this on this night and then I'm going to have lunch for those next days. It's a great way to save money. It's a great way to make sure you're eating really good food.
Yeah, just typically when you plan out, you eat better if you plan.
Yes, it's the reason fast food works is because you're already hungry.
Yeah.
And you don't have the plan of what you're going to cook.
And remember that red episode we spoke about fast food chains?
We talked about McDonald's and KFC and all these red things. All right, a rank. Out of 10 for red.
Is there an 11 on the scale? No, I'm kidding.
This one goes to 11.
We've finally made it right back round to the color wheel after existing in my tri-color pairing for ages.
We've been in Grixis for a while, it's true.
We're finally at green. And Walt's now smiling again. It feels like he's comfortable.
No, I enjoy all the colors of magic.
Well, look, green, to recap green wants acceptance. We found that green didn't really have an end goal per se, more of a way of living its life. When we spoke about green, we ended up talking about Stoic philosophy.
Yep, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and those old dudes who love to live in the world where they could dismiss the things around them and go, nope, the world is the way it is and that's okay.
Yeah, so that was about acceptance, and we talked about the logos and how that can't be changed, but our attitudes towards what's happening to us and in front of us can be. And in the context of Commando, when we spoke about it, you put it really brilliantly in that episode. The inevitability of green was something that you said about like this overgrowing mana advantage and this like you just let those +1 counters keep building, you will die to them.
Yeah, if you don't stop green will typically overrun you.
Yeah. Have you seen all those like really weird online videos where it's like what New York City would look like if humans just disappeared in a year?
And it's got like the greenery everywhere. I haven't seen those, but I can imagine.
They're really cool little like animated, time lapses of what would happen to like big cities.
Definitely. All right. How are we like green in our everyday lives?
Well, me and you relate a lot to this. And we said this in the green episode.
Yes.
We love Stoic philosophy.
Yeah. There's a lot of merit in this idea of going, okay, you do have to accept a good chunk of the things in the world and the way that they are and kind of just live with them.
Yeah, because Walt and I are Walt said it hates authoritarian government systems and stuff, but like that's the world Walt lives in, and Walt has to have a job and obey the laws and all this kind of stuff. It's like, there's a lot about Stoicism that is very comforting because it means your life is easier to live if you, instead of being wallowing in that misery that is around you, you can change the world that directly affects you, and that's all you can do.
Definitely.
I think, weirdly, the other thing that I really relate to with green is the tradition aspect of green.
Okay.
I am a huge fan of tradition, not like traditional values of like,
not like the conservative style, values. Like, family values and all this nonsense.
Yeah, but I like the traditions that like make life like mean something.
Okay.
So like I am a huge fan of our Sunday mornings. Like this has become a tradition for us. Do you know what I mean?
For reference, we record almost all of our episodes on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. I realize you guys aren't in the room with us when we do this.
Probably 90 to 95% of the episodes you've heard, it's me and James, and it's before 12 p.m. on a Sunday.
Sunday morning with a cup of tea, literally drinking it right now. So that's usually the vibe. And I love that. I genuinely think that like I really enjoy the fact that those traditions are there. And even within my family, there are like really strong traditions that make me feel very connected to them.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, because all my family are overseas in England, when I go back to England and we have that big Sunday dinner roast with the whole family, that is really important to me and really, really special. And I wouldn't change that for the world. And I like, it's, you know, something that I'm thinking about is my grandparents are getting older.
Yeah.
And it's going to cut me to ribbons if
to not have that tradition anymore. Yeah.
You know, and I'll have to implement something of like, okay, now we do it at my auntie's house.
Yeah.
And my auntie has to be responsible for doing
time.
it. I think that's really, really important to me. And I love that about green, that it gives life a profound meaning that isn't explained by blues. You know,
it's not intellectual necessarily.
It's not intellectual.
No.
It's not like for a government structure. No. It's not for those traditional.
It's for people and it's for connections between people. Yeah,
and I love that about green.
Absolutely,
it's a weird one for me to go no, but that is because I never thought I was really, really green until we did that episode and we talked about tradition, and I was like, actually. Yeah, I really relate to that. That's important.
Definitely. I mean, I think the thing that we found with green is probably white and green are the most collectivist colors. We talked about the individualism, collectivism thing earlier. I think white you'd probably say is the most, but green would be closely behind.
Yeah.
And it's slightly different in green, where white is about the systems and how we're all connected, and green is kind of about accepting the world you live in and the connections that are in it, like your family, like your ancestry, like your culture.
Yeah.
And that's a really important aspect of green. And there's a reason that why when you get white and green together, you get community, right?
Which is the Lesnia conclave, for sure.
It's a really big thing. And I'm the same. I really deviate towards that. I think specifically like the natural world, obviously we see a lot in green, but the connections between things in the natural world, I love my little garden that I've cultivated. I love the plants in my house. I love bugs and nature. Like, you know, you came over one day and you're like, oh, there's a wasp in your front door. And I was like, oh, this is this kind of wasp, you know? Like,
and you were like, oh, we don't need to touch it.
I know I've said it already, but I am vegan. And a big part of being vegan is like acknowledging that there's like an interconnectedness to all the things in the world, and you can move through it in a way. You can move through the world in a way that harms a very small number of the things around you.
Yeah, and I think just even in your daily life, you're all about like letting things be. You know, in its natural environment, you don't want to disturb it.
There's a balance in me between my blue desire to perfect things and this very green thing of going, but also I need to let things lie.
Well, I guess that's your green thumb, right? You're like, I can help this plant grow by making sure that I balance the soil.
I know which things
water.
This plant needs to grow, but also ultimately I need to leave it to let it grow. It's like a really delicate balance.
That's your conflict, I guess. The color conflict.
I think so. I do think I have a pretty firm and maybe stoic belief that things will generally work themselves out.
Yep.
And I try to let things go. I'm not going to say this is like a really core tenet of me, because I think I spend more time struggling against the things that are happening in my life and trying to fix them. Very blue and white oriented ways of doing things. But I do have a part of me that's kind of going like, no, things will turn out. And a lot of the time when I talk with my partner, I realize this is a thing that we differ quite a lot on, where she's really like, I've got to fix this thing. And I'm like, actually, maybe the way to fix this is to like leave yourself out of it, or take a step back, or to take a few days or a week or a month or something.
Now that I'm thinking about Electra, I do see that in her, and I do see you being the one that is the calm, let's move back away from this because it'll resolve itself.
I'm very much a like, let's take a moment to think kind of thing, which I guess you could argue is quite blue, but I think there's also a green aspect of that of going like, everyone will feel better if we give it time.
Does anyone want
there's an acceptance there. Yeah. I think I've got some of that. Right. How do we play Commander like green, James?
Look, Commander and green for me are two words that I don't relate to. I have like 2 green decks, Zaxara and Bears.
Yeah.
Is there another one?
No. Probably not anymore.
I think I disassembled Gishath. I think they're my only green decks.
I guess you technically have the Elf Ball deck, but I know that's mostly Theo's.
Yeah, Theo mostly runs that one now. But I think weirdly though, the way I play other colors kind of represents green a lot, in the fact that I think green is the most Timmy of the colors.
Oh, sure.
Big creatures, especially if I can cheat them out. Like, if I can just cheat out like a 12-12.
Well, like, you love a Sphinx of the Second Sun. That's a very Timmy play.
A Sphinx of the Second Sun.
It's got like a very spiky kind of like ceiling of like, I'm going to have all the answers and all my other cards are going to be better. But it is also just an 8 mana creature that you can cheat out with reanimated stuff.
And I think that like the the aspect of Timmy that I'm loving with green is the big explosive plays, which I do very quickly from red, but the peak of them is the green bit. Like, I'm exploding with red to get to the dream of being this massive tree or massive giant. And I think that's green in me, which is like, I love the big ideas. And I think that blue and white and even black are not the colors of like physically big ideas. Like, they're not thinking, white wants to build a big city, sure, but blue wants a lot of books, sure, but like green is like, I want a dinosaur to rip your face off, and I'm much more interested in that kind of stuff.
I think the top of your curves look quite green in this way.
Yeah.
You love a big splashy, like, okay, I win kind of thing.
And I guess I do play, like, we looked at the mana curves of our decks compared. I play very high mana curves.
Well, and you ramp a lot. And like, admittedly, you play in a lot of colors that you tend to ramp with rocks. But if you're in green, you play every ramp spell you can get access to. You're on your Ramp of Growth, you're on your Farseek, Nature's War, Cultivate,
Kadama's Reach,
everything. Your Zaxara deck has like 20 of these spells in it. It's silly.
It's actually ridiculous. that deck needs some love. It's actually not on Moxfield because it's
That's right.
So
came
weirdly
up in the last
edited,
episode.
Yeah.
It's fate. You need to fix it clearly.
But I think that you play in a green way a lot more than I do.
It's interesting. I was trying to think about the way of playing that's green, because I guess I always come back to acceptance with green, and I think acceptance is not really a thing you do much in Commander, because you
have to change things.
You have to be building towards something. I think I play a lot of inevitable decks. I mean, I have a mono green deck, but I build like a deck that has like sort of an inevitable engine over several turns. I think I spoke about this when we talked about green, that I think this is the green thing that green does so well, is like, if you just leave every color to do its own thing, with no interaction whatsoever, red will be the fastest out the gate, but in a long game, green will win every time. Like, just playing a creature every turn, green's creatures are better and bigger and more effective.
It's bigger.
It's better. It's too much for Mr. Incredible. Whoa. It's finally ready. Anyway,
I also think something to note about your decks with this inevitability thing, a lot of your decks fold a lot harder to board wipes.
They do.
Than like some of my decks, for example.
It's true. I'm definitely one to just like keep deploying. And so, you tend to build a very wide board when you build in that way. I mean, even when I approach colors that aren't like this, I tend to build them in this way. Like when I built my Wart the Raid Mother like spell copy deck, it was a goblin deck. I wanted to go wide and win with a goblin kind of thing. So, I would say I definitely build in this like inevitable engine kind of green way. And I guess that I'm also a fairly patient player. I mean, I play stacks in CDH after all.
You got to be patient if you're playing Yashan in CDH.
Yeah. What do we do that green hates, and/or what can we learn from green, James?
I think I could learn to be a bit more patient. If anything, I could learn to just let things lie and let things grow. I'm sometimes way too impatient with projects and plans, and even Commander sometimes. Like, I know sometimes, like I said a lot, that I'll sit and wait and contemplate, but sometimes I will pull that trigger of trying to explode too early.
Sure.
And green could have just helped me accept the fact that I can survive one more turn.
Yeah.
And I think, the burnout problem that I have with red and black that we spoke about, green can help me a lot with this. Green would really tell me, okay, sit, relax. You need to take time off and recover in your natural way. Don't try and like, look, this is my version of recovery. Oh, I'm really tired. I'll crack my 4th can of Red Bull today. Green would look at me and be like, you're an idiot, dude. Like, that's not recovering.
Green is very much about being who you are destined to be, but it's also about doing what is in your nature. And so, like, I mean, I guess you could play this both ways. You could say it is in your nature to be who you are and to want to go faster and more. But equally, I can see an argument, like you're saying, of green going like, okay, maybe it's time to have a rest if you're so tired.
I would see that argument if Red Bull grew on trees. And if I was like a monkey climbing through the trees, drinking Red Bull. But I don't think that that's the case.
I mean, this is the tough thing about the fact that Magic is a fantasy realm, though, is that I think the way... I mean, we've talked about this in the philosophy series before, like, the way that you approach, like, the philosophies as you see them in Magic and apply them to the world is very different, because most of us don't live in natural environments. Yes, I have a garden, but it's tiny.
You live in a house.
I also live in a house, And
on a street, in a city.
And so you got to think about, like, how's the green live in the city? And I think, maybe it is this kind of like, whatever, what will be will be.
Maybe, but
Yeah.
I think the thing for me, what I want to take away from
Sure.
green is that like sometimes I just need to take a step back, and I think that like this is no more represented than in my fight or flight response.
Yeah.
I'm always a fight. I'm always like I've tested this multiple times. I will always
Scientifically proven.
Yeah, it's the p-value is significant. I will just always go for fights, like 80% of the time, and I
Yeah.
think I think that green looks at that and goes, no. Sometimes you don't even need to fight. Sometimes you don't even need to flight. Sometimes you just need to let it lie.
Yeah.
And I think I could learn a lot from that.
Definitely. I think I could similarly learn to let things go. I think I definitely have a tendency to obsess, probably in a very blue way. I'm like, I must fix this. I must solve this
Overthinker.
problem. Yeah, I'm a big overthinker for sure. I think green would be very like, whatever, like move on.
Sure,
It's
yeah,
time to
yeah,
move past this thing. Stop thinking about it all the time. And I think, it's tough. Green, I know has like, green aligns with white on this, like, there are structures in the world, but green doesn't really like constructed structures, I would say. And so I think
The
green
lines are more wiggly.
yeah, I think green would look at some of the structures I've built on myself and be like, some of these are probably suppressing some of who you are. Like, because green is really about be who you are, be who you're born to be. I think green would look at some of my structures and go like, yes, you're technically like perfecting yourself or whatever, but are you being what you truly want to be? And if you're not, then maybe you need to like relax on some of these structures a bit.
It's funny because I always see you such a focused green person, but then there's been many times where I've come into your house and you're like, I'm overthinking this one thing, James. I'm just like stuck on this one thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's interesting. I never thought about how that's like very anti-green.
Well, it can be. It's so interesting. All these things are so nebulous. Do you have a mark for green?
I do. I just wrote it down.
Okay, well, we have finished all
finished
5
them.
of the colors and how we feel we relate to each of them.
So how do we
guess
want to
need
read these out?
I don't know. What
Should
do
we
you
go
think?
like, what's your white score? What's my white score?
Sure.
Okay.
And then let's talk about what our color identity, like based on the marks
based on those
is.
marks. All right. Starting off with white. I rated myself out of 10 for white a 4.5.
I respect that. That seems about right.
I didn't want to give myself a 5 because I was like, that's too high. That's too structured. That feels like that's the halfway house, right?
Yeah.
But I
You feel
didn't
like
want
you're
to.
more on the side of not structured than structure.
But I didn't want to go all the way down to 4 because I just love community so much, and that was my 0.5 that I put myself there.
You do still have structure in your life as well. I agree with the 4.5. That sounds right. I gave myself a 10.
Yeah, okay, that's a 10.
I don't know. I don't really see how I could realistically be almost any more white in the way that white is.
I mean, you weigh your muesli.
I know.
That's
it's ridiculous.
Find me another person on the planet that does that's not a bodybuilder. All right.
Yeah. Blue. Where are you at with blue?
I went back and forth on this for a bit, but I landed on a 7 out of 10 for blue.
Wow, interesting.
I think I might actually say, now that I'm saying it out loud, I might go 7.5.
Sure.
I'm going to go 7.5 for blue because
I respect that.
I think for blue, the thing that I struggle with is that the thing that bumped the score down, because everything else in my life is so blue. I love being in control. I love having the knowledge.
Yeah.
But I am too reckless and I'm too impulsive.
I think there's a natural thing that happens when you start looking at your scores and enemy colors of scores where it's like, yes, I might be blue, but you know, as we're probably going to go into, how red you are, and you kind of can't be all blue and all red. There's got to be some interplay there.
Yeah, Niv Mizzet would have the same troubles of self that I have, I'm sure.
I'm sure he would. I gave myself an 8 for blue.
An 8? Yeah, and I actually really respect that you're higher on this scale than me.
Yeah, I think that it's just a big part of how I live my life, and to a detriment. Like I would say, don't consider us being like bigging ourselves up on these. Like we're saying we're this color in this way that is the good parts of that color, but also the detriments.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying being very high on white and blue that I am struggling with the things that white and blue struggle with.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, oh, but James is the counterspell player. James is going to be more blue. But in our lives, I genuinely think Walt is a lot more thought out than I am and a lot more... I like playing counterspells because I get to go, ha ha, I got you. Whereas Walt likes blue because he's researching every aspect about his micronutrients.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's interesting. I would say you play blue a lot more like as a color, and also you play in a lot more blue of a way in Commander. But I agree. In our daily lives, I think I live a much more blue life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm blue.
That's it.
All right, black.
Black.
I rated myself an 8.
8 for black. I see it. It's interesting. It's not something that immediately comes to mind for you, but the more you describe the things that black does, the ambition, the drive.
The fact that you are like advocating for yourself all the time.
Yep. You're very high on black. And this is another one of those ones where it's like the way we see black in Magic is people who like murder and kill to get what they want. It's like, okay, we don't live in a world where people murder and kill, at least people that we know. But I think the way that
you know
the way that we see black in the real world is ambition, is drive, and is a lot of the things that you do.
Yeah, and like that ladder climbing stuff that I was talking about with work. I think that's really me.
Yep. I gave myself a 2 for black.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna spoil it. It's my lowest color.
Yeah.
And again, to a detriment. I think I could afford to be more black than I am, but
I think you have the most lessons to learn from black.
Yeah.
Like you have the most to gain from researching more about black.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And I think we learned that in that black episode as well. You were like, yeah, maybe I should do that more.
Definitely.
All right, red.
Yep.
Yeah, it's my highest. I didn't score myself a 10.
Okay.
But I went 9.5.
I respect that.
The 9.5 specifically, the 0.5 that I lost was the fact that I'm also very blue. So I didn't feel like I could score myself a 10 out of red because I do think about things. I genuinely do. I do my research on stuff. I really, really am thought out, and I do like to plan, and I do like to get to a perfect point. Like, you know, with the podcast, I'm like, no, I don't want to put out a really shitty promotional material. I would rather perfect it, you know?
But I agree with you in what you've marked here, which is that you are more red than blue.
I'm much more red than blue.
The way you live your life is very in the moment. It's very emotion based.
The way I play Commander is a lot more red than blue.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I see that a lot. I was going to go lower than this, but as I was describing all the creativity things, I think I realized I gave myself a 4 for red.
Okay.
I think it could probably be slightly lower than this. Maybe it's a 3.5 or a 3. But I think the fact that Mark Oswald has definitively said blue-red is the colors of creativity, I feel like I shouldn't dismiss that.
And look,
it's a big part of my life.
You are very blue as well, so there's like, you know, that pull to the creative combination.
Yeah, I could be the blue-red, but the blue side of blue-red in that way. Yeah.
It's interesting. I do want to highlight, now that we've gone through black and red, we had a bigger disparity between black than red.
Oh, so it was, as you said, it was the biggest discrepancy. That makes sense.
I think black is the biggest discrepancy. All right, green.
Green.
I just went for 5 on green for me. I think that because I just love Stoic philosophy so much, and I try, like when I'm in times of trouble, and Mother Mary said to me, I look to green. I look to green a lot to get me through periods of trouble. I don't look to blue. I don't look to red. I don't look to black. Don't look to white. Green is my color of comfort, and I think the fact that I take comfort in green means that it deserves a higher score.
Yeah, like I respect that.
So 5, I just landed solid right in the middle. 5.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, 5.
I also rated myself a 5.
Yeah.
Thinking about it more, I don't know. Do you think I'm more green than you?
I think so. I reckon you could probably be a 6.
Maybe a 6 in green. It's interesting. It's not something that comes immediately to mind. It's very... Okay, well, we can go into the full color philosophy things now of how it shakes up, of what our color identity is. So green is interesting to me. For a long time, I thought I was white-green because white-green was all I played in Commander.
Selesnya.
Yep, but increasingly I've realized that I am definitively white-blue.
Yeah, very
as my
Azorius.
core, base white for sure, and then blue being a very close secondary color for me. It's just the structure thing. It's the way I live my life is structured. It's about knowledge. It's about perfection. Again, to a fault, but I think I'm definitively white-blue, and then the only argument for me is whether I am Jeskai and getting red, or if I'm Bant and getting green. Regardless, I am base white-blue, and I guess based on the marks, I would have to say that I'm Bant.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar spot where, like, I found that, you know, I think a lot of people assume me to be blue. The fact that I have in response on my arm is like a very blue player thing to say. But I am so red. I am phenomenally red. And I think the fact that It plays out in Commander when I make those explosive turns. I'm really impulsive in my daily life.
Yep.
Very red. The interesting thing here is that my black and blue score are very, very close. 7.5 and 8. 7.5 for blue, 8 for black. So
Yeah.
I guess you could call me Rakdos, but I think I have to be
Grixis,
like all up.
We've talked about this before off the podcast, that I think you have a more balanced color identity. If we're looking at like the 3 colors that you're most represented in, like I think for me, I'm pretty definitively white, blue, and then a green splash kind of thing. Whereas I would say if you're a commander, like if we're designing a legendary creature,
My
that's
color
James,
identity is
you
Grixis.
would be Grixis,
and it would be
definitively.
in my casting cost.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
What do you think? How do we all shake up?
It's funny because we've done this for fun outside of the podcast before, but I think this is the finale. This is what I'm locking in as our color identities now. And I'm looking at mine going, I'm really proud of who I am, and I understand what I can do better.
Yeah.
I'm understanding what I'm really good at.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at yours going, I understand who you are and how I can even help you as a friend.
Yeah.
Like the colors that you're lacking, I can be those colors.
Definitely. Well, in the same way that, you might look to me for structure, I think I need to look to you for emotion and drive,
Yeah.
I would say.
Wow. Look, we've learned a lot about the colors of magic in these 7 episodes that we did across this series. We've looked at human history with all the color, all the way back to Socrates, up to Isaac Newton, and now even with us. We've learned a lot about political structures, epistemology, stoicism, and even the psychological and emotional effects of seeing a particular color on our favorite drink can.
Your favorite drink, yeah.
Red Bull. We hope you have learned a little bit about what makes this game so much more than just a game. And we hope that in that process, you learn a little bit more about yourselves too. So, Space Commanders, command received.
Nice. And to the listeners, do you feel commanded? And what do you think your color identity would be? And what do you think of our color identity, of course?
Yeah, and if you want to have a crack now that you know our color identities, want to design the Walt and James Commanders, legendary creatures,
fun, for sure.
Be keen to see them. You can send them to us on all of our social platforms, at Get Commanded on all of them, or you can talk to us live in our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Get Commanded. And if you can't join us live, you can always watch the video on demands on the YouTube channel later.
You definitely can. And of course, don't forget to check out our Patreon page. It's linked in the show notes. It's the absolute best way to support the Get Commanded podcast. We'd like to thank our patrons Stella Tam, Fuzzy, Bottomless Potamus, and Dyer, and an extra special shout out to Fletcher Cutting and Wizard Down Under, who support us in the Space Commander tier. We love you!
You are the best.
It's true.
And also Palms Off Gaming. They're also the best. They're the sponsor of this podcast. These guys create awesome deck boxes, sleeves, binders, and other gaming accessories, and have a fantastic Instagram challenge going on at the moment. Not sure if you've seen it.
No.
Jacob's trying to get a coffee pod in the Nespresso machine from like a good 5 meters away. I've just been following it. It's been hilarious.
I love that.
And he's doing it every day until he gets it in. He's on like day 50 or something.
Love that.
Look, if you love these guys and love their antics, you can go check them out on all their socials or check out their website, palmsoffgaming.com.au /#getcommanded. If you go to that link, you'll get 10% off your purchase and support us at the same time. So that's palmsoffgaming.com.au /#getcommanded.
Yeah. Nice. Get him. Get him. We should planeswalk.
Yeah, well, this
outside
has
of Magic.
been a long episode.
It has indeed.
It's a culmination of many, so it deserves the length.
It does indeed. I'd like to talk about Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
I am so excited to play this with you. Literally, the second I arrived at Walt's this morning to record this podcast, he sent me a message last night of a photo of the Nintendo 64 he had when he was a kid.
That is now set up in my house, and I have installed an HDMI converter so it can be played on my big flat screen TV. It's so cool. Funnily enough, I got impatient while I was waiting for the adapter to come because I only got it last night. So I was looking up just like some of the games I wanted to play. I don't know, just like out of curiosity. And I looked up Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which is like basically a pod racing game that was released alongside the first episode of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I was looking it up and it said release date 2020. And I was like, that's not right. It came out like 1999. In 2020, they released a HD remake of Star Wars Episode 1 Racer.
Way.
And it's available on Nintendo Switch. Yeah.
I have a Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. I picked up a copy for $20.
It's $20?
It's $20.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's like exactly the same game. They haven't added anything whatsoever, but like it's a pretty decent HD remake. Like the stuff looks definitely a lot better than it would if you were playing on Nintendo 64.
But the game itself,
the game itself is the same. And honestly, I've had an absolute blast. There are 34 tracks, I believe, in the whole game.
Yeah.
I've got 3 left. I bought this game about 3 days ago. So yeah, it's been really fun. Just like the level design, all the little shortcuts. It feels a lot like how pod racing looked in that film, of like the thrill, of the speed, of the shortcuts.
I remember the speed being the hard, because I played that game on Nintendo 64 when I was a kid, and the speed of the game, like,
they've really captured it.
Your reaction time is so important in that game.
They really captured the feeling of pod racing in that way, and it's just so fun. You can even boost, and the boost sound is the same one they use in the film. Yeah, it's got like a boost sound. It's so sick. Anyway, just wanted to remind any of you, in case you played that game as a kid and want to play it again, there's a HD remake. It's only $20. Get it on the Nintendo Switch store. It's sick.
Or come around to Walt's very soon and play
on
with
a
Walt
LAN
and
party.
James.
Yeah, that's true.
That I genuinely am so keen for that. And I want us to like do the old school thing where we sit on the floor in front of the TV and play it.
Big time. Super
so
keen.
much fun.
Anyway, that's all we have time for. So we'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander Players.
Bye.